Welcome back to the weekly edition of the Celts Are Here Flagship podcast. It's myself, Declan, joined by Quinny. We'll call this a Christmas special, Quinny. Why not? Because it's the last time myself and you will be on before the big day. Hopefully Santa is good to you and all our listeners out there. He delivered another 3 points for the champions last night. It would be great if that was even more than a 9-point lead going into Christmas, but some things are not to be. Just kind of overall, Quinny, your thoughts on the 2-1 victory against Livingston last night?
First of all, Merry Christmas to you, Declan, for when it comes, and I hope Santa's good to you as well, buddy, and everyone else listening. I think Santa could have stayed in Aberdeen for another couple of minutes the other night before he decided to head down the motorway.
It's not far as well for his gaff, is it?
It's not at all. He must have been on his way down,
Yeah.
I think he left the party a bit early up there. It was good to get the 3 points last night. In terms of first thoughts, in the kind of aftermath of it, the day after, the goal conceded is a real sucker punch, I think, on the result. I don't think that's something the manager will be too chuffed about. Again, we'll be getting into the defence, so I'll kind of save that for when we get to it. But I think, losing the clean sheet's probably one of the things I'm waking up to this morning and still kind of thinking about in terms of, the squad and who's playing where and all that kind of thing. But, it was another dominant display with only a couple of goals. It feels like a little bit of a ongoing kind of pattern that we're kind of falling into at the moment, which is causing all sorts of division amongst the fan base on different players in different positions, isn't it?
Yeah, but we're only back 2 games in and already, there's some wild opinions coming out, which we'll discuss through. It's obviously in due course through the podcast that we give it their place. But of course, when at the weekend, it was a blockbuster game at the weekend, which I think it'd be unfair not to talk about. A game that a team was in complete control, a game that the GOAT scored in. Of course, I'm talking about Celtic versus Aberdeen.
That's it.
You think about Argentina France game? No, I think, we've had a good bit of World Cup chat on here. We obviously covered, where we were off. It was only right that we spoke about the 4 Celtic players that were at the World Cup. We got the final I think we all really wanted. We got the outcome that I wanted. I think you probably wanted as well. And seeing the greatest, in my opinion, I know that divides opinion with some people, lift the World Cup. But what a game, Quinny. I don't want to spend too much time on this, so don't switch off if you're listening. But what a game of football.
Yeah, I think quite comfortably the best game of football I've watched, from in terms of like when you get hyped up for like a big Champions League final or, World Cup games, Euros, any kind of mainstay, elite competition. It was the best game for living up to the hype I think I've ever watched, like so many games. Like I remember, I think probably the worst example of this is I remember being in like high school and the Champions League final was at Old Trafford and it was Juventus versus AC Milan. And both of those teams were star-studded as it comes. And it was 0-0 all the way to penalties. And I think it even went to sudden death penalties. It was the most boring game ever.
What year would that be?
04 or something, give or take.
Right, okay. My first Champions League final, I think I properly remember, is when United beat Chelsea in the penalty kicks.
Sure.
As the first one, but properly remember. And like cheering for a team is probably Inter Bayern in 2010. I think that was Milito had a stormer of a game. For that wee period, there's a lot of good Champions League finals in there. You had Bayern in the mix. You'd obviously Inter there, a great Barcelona side that tore Man United apart at Wembley the year after it. So, yeah, I think you're right there, Quinny. It did live up to the hype. You're a wee bit older than me, but you've watched him throughout his whole career. Messi, the greatest for you?
Oh, yeah. Yes, he is. I think he is the number one football player of all time. But for me, the greatest actual talented player of all time, for me personally, is Ronaldinho. I don't think anyone, I even think, Messi's a better elite player, if you know what I mean. But in terms of, just actual, alien, ability with the football, I don't think anyone touches him personally. But, Messi is head and shoulders above him for a team and, in actual football terms.
Listen, Ronaldinho was a football legend, a phenomenal player. I remember actually, I think it was the first pair of football boots I ever had, and it was these Nike brown things, and it had Ronaldinho on the side of them.
Sure.
Looking back on him, maybe not the best decision fashion choice wise. I would hope that, for the age of 7 or 8 or whenever that was, I've improved a wee bit. But I like Ronaldinho a lot. He's kind of, when I was growing up, he was coming towards the end of his career, but top player at Barcelona, AC, blah blah blah, and obviously for his national team too. But that's that in the World Cup chat. But we've had that bit on it. Well done to Juranovic. We'll get that out of the way too.
Yeah,
getting that third
congratulations.
place. I was having a wee look at it. I know it's been something people have been talking about in the past few days. Croatia having such a small population and constantly punching above their weight. And again, for the past couple of weeks, that this podcast has been taken up by a good bit of time talking about Jura transfer deals. Maybe get on to maybe chat a bit about Barcelona having that wee bit of interest in him. But at this point in time, his stock has risen to a point that is absolutely fantastic for Celtic. But back to last night, Quinny. You said it was dominant for majority of the game. I think it was. I think Celtic deserved to win the game. It was only one change from the weekend, bringing Liel Abada in. I want to start with him, another top performance, and he's came back after this World Cup break. I know we've only played 2 games, but he's looked like a real bright spark for Celtic.
Oh yeah, and it's funny because when we did the podcast last week, the team that started last night is the team that I predicted to start the Aberdeen game.
Yeah.
And the main difference to it was obviously Maeda actually started Aberdeen. So it was really good to see that team kind of roll out. And we got that from the friendly against Rennes. That was basically the team that had went out in that kind of little mini...
The kickabout, I called it, remember?
The kickabout down the Garth Cube, yeah.
That's it, aye. That's it, the kickabout in the public park.
So I wasn't too surprised to see him get the start. I was surprised to see him get the full 90, but I think that was kind of forced upon the manager by other situations in the match when substitutes had to be made and stuff. But, one thing we all know about Abada is he's great on the front foot. He'll push people back, and he's got that sniff of just where to be for himself to score. And he's very direct in his delivery. He doesn't really try anything over elaborate, and he's quite repeatable in the best possible way. So yeah, great performance from him. And again, the thing with Abada is since we've had him all of last season, he blew us away. This season, he's continuing on. His goals and assists per minute is out of this world.
Yeah. I was looking at it this morning. It's 24 goals since he arrived, and I think if I'm correct, it's 15 assists, which are numbers that are, for a 21-year-old, are absolutely incredible. And you think about it, that he's not a player. Last season he played a lot of minutes, a lot of football, but he's not been, maybe featured as much this season. And again, I thought it was funny. I don't know if you've seen the comments, Quinny. I'll read them out here. After the game, Ange was asked about Abada's game time. And of course, after watching him, being up at Pittodrie on Saturday, I thought, yep, he needs to play against Livy. He did. Good game, deserved a goal, but we'll get onto that controversy. But when asked about Abada's game time, the manager's retort was, no, that's not the way it works, mate. You don't put in requests for game time. It's all earned. He's done very well. The most important thing with Liel is that he is constantly improving and wants to improve every day. He is looking to be a better player. I thought he was great today and really took the game to them. But even him, a couple of times in the first half, I thought he should have been in areas where we know he is really dangerous and can get goals. It's just a reaffirmation for him and his role in the team and why it is important. It was a good performance from Abada. I think that's actually quite fair from Ange. We'll get on to it because, I always think since he's arrived at Celtic, his honesty has always shown through. When it's not went well or we've not been at our best, I think he's been pretty honest about it, Quinny. Last night was an example of that. I think we're just seeing a Celtic team who's a bit rusty just now coming off the back of that break, and they're just not at the point where you'd probably like them to be.
Yeah, and it's the same thing we've said on the podcast a few times. It's like cohesion, it's one of the comments from the manager that came out that got a lot of attention was talking about the amount of deliveries we made into the final third, into the 6-yard area, and having people fulfilling their job and being in the right position and whatever. And whether he makes changes off the back of anything he didn't see last night, perhaps I'm sure we'll go on to. But I think part of that is repetition, is cohesion, is just getting back up to speed. And a lot of the guys didn't go to the World Cup, so that's why we're seeing a really great effort, I think, from them all starting off. There's no real reason for them to be out of general fitness and stuff like that. But it's only going to be done on the pitch is the real kind of breakthrough from that sense. And like we've been calling on the pod for a while, for us to really elevate this team for the potential to come out of it that we're all seeing it, we need to get into the habit of scoring 4s and 5s and those kind of numbers. And we're definitely creating the chances for it. So I love to hear the manager's frustration that, we've won 2-1 and he is pushing the players and he is raising those expectations that we need to put more of these chances away, you know?
Yeah, no, and absolutely. And that quote that you're talking about, Quinny, was the amount of times the ball get flashed across the 6 yard box and we weren't there was unacceptable. Pretty straightforward. And it's true, it was frustrating at times. I think that's the biggest thing with this Celtic team is frustration rather than disappointment. It's the same in the Champions League, but when it creeps into domestic football, it becomes a bigger annoyance. We're winning games, the stretch of games. I want to talk about that later on in the pod. But we're getting there. I'm not worried at all. We're dominant in games. I would just like to see us, because I think the players deserve the rewards. For instance, on Saturday, very, very difficult up against a packed defence, Mr. Anti-Football, who seem to have a real turnaround in a couple of days' time. It's difficult, and I think we can all see that from a game like Aberdeen. We were dominant in it. We deserved to win the game. But like last night, when you get so many chances, you put the ball into danger areas. You want a Kyogo or a Jota, a Abada to be in the end, and even your midfielders arriving and O'Reilly and whatever else. It never happened last night. As you say, it's probably just needing to get that bit of game time in the park, getting that bit of cohesion back into the team and getting everything rolling once again. But Abada, good performance. And just while we're talking about him, came out this morning from our old mate Fabrizio Romano,
Right.
who we know can talk some nonsense at times, don't we? Because he brought out stuff about Juranovic in August, and according to him, he was off ski. We know obviously that wasn't the case, but he comes out today with a report in Jota. I don't know if you've seen this, Quinny, to say that Premier League clubs are following Liel Abada for the future. Talented winger born in 2001, has scored 24 goals. Fabrizio's got his stats on here. He said 13 assists, but I looked it up as 15 according to the transfer market. In 18 months, Celtic consider Abada as a key player and they want to keep him at all costs, even if Premier League clubs are tracking him. 20, I don't think this is a no-brainer for me. He's 21. He's contracted to 2026 for a good wee while. I know everybody's got the price at Celtic Park, but he shouldn't be going anywhere.
No, and I don't think he's in a great rush either. So I don't think it really suits anyone because anyone who is interested in Abada is not starting him. He's not going to be in a better position squad wise than he is with us, And I think everyone's kind of aware of that. We had some noises come out for Abada last year when he was on great form that maybe people were going to try and take him off us very quickly. And again, it was the same kind of noises that came from Abada and the club. Is just not the right time. We all believe in his ability and we're sure he's going to reach the top and all the rest of it. But everyone connected to the player understands his best chance at progression is here.
Absolutely. And he's working under a coach that we know has a track record of developing players. I don't usually listen to much that David Martindale says, but he before the game, getting into the game against Celtic, he was talking about, Postecoglou improving every single player in the building. And if you think, Abada was an unknown quantity, I think it'd be fair to say when he arrived from Israeli football last summer, you probably looked at him as, here we go, another project, Marian Shved signing. He comes in, he makes an impact right away against Midtjylland. He scored the first goal in the Ange era, Liel Abada, and he's just continued to deliver. And again, you could see maybe just in his Champions League performances there was a bit of stage fright, but certainly domestically he stepped up when we really needed him. He likes a goal against Rangers in the derby games, and he's a good player. And I think, as you say, Quinny, for his development, this is the best place to be. And certainly, going to the Premier League at this point in time, I think would just be a bad move for him at 21 because there's so much more development. As I say, he's contracted to Celtic for just under 4 years remaining in his contract, so there's no reason why. Actually over 4 years. I think it's May 2026. No reason why he should be going anywhere. So I don't think that transfer update is anything to be worried by. We'll take a step back from Abada playing on that right hand side and we'll go to the right back. We spoke last week about Anfred Ralston, that basically the chat from you and I was it's his jersey to lose at this point in time because we knew Juranovic wasn't going to return back from the World Cup for the game against Aberdeen, obviously. The manager confirmed in his pre-match to Aberdeen that he would be getting a week off. I know he didn't play for Croatia against Morocco. Supposedly he's got an injury. With the situation that we're in here, if Ange delivered an update in Tony Ralston, and he's hoping it's not too bad. I'll try and get the quotes up. Pretty sharp after the game. He gave this update on Tony Ralston. I'll get it here. But do you think there's a possible case, Quinny, that if Johnson not been available until the beginning of January, which would be the Rangers game, be the first game after that, and Stephen Welsh is out injured, we know he played right back before. Obviously, the manager didn't fancy bringing on Big Moritz to fire in there or one of his other centre halves. He used Taylor there. Do you think there's a possibility that, I know people are saying they don't think we'll see Juranovic in a Celtic jersey again, but points are precious, and if you need to play him, I wouldn't be surprised to see him fire in at Easter Road.
No, if he's fit and available, then I think he'll be played. Because without Ralston, that every other option only weakens us, and we're talking about the importance of cohesion and not getting a clean sheet last night, etc. We've seen obviously Starfelt keep his place, and I think that's the signal. I think we'll probably now see Starfelt and CCV kept together in this stretch of games anyway until we get to the new year. So I don't think the manager is going to welcome this kind of problem, this kind of headache, and he would rather have Juranovic in a square peg than a square peg in a round hole situation,
Yeah.
So I definitely think if he's fit and available, I was listening to one of the post-match, listened to all the post-match stuff from Celtic fan media last night that I could get my hands on, and I heard somebody saying that it might be, Hibs might be the game that he can come back for from when his holiday's over and his injury should have recovered and all the rest of it. So I think Hibs is a huge game, and then obviously, is AJ going to get thrown right in? Is Ralston injury that bad? Could he even be back? There's still, so for when we get into the new year, it's not quite as much pressure on it. But in any case, having Juranovic around is only going to stabilise things and keep some sort of level and tempo going all the way through this period.
And at the end of the day, it only makes us a better team.
Yeah.
And I know, there's a lot of chat around Juranovic being an asset for Celtic just now. That is true. But, the prize at the end of the season is also a big asset. And the only way you get there is by winning the league and getting points in the table. We've got big games coming up. And we've got a 9-point lead. I'm not worried about that lead at all. But, I think all of us want Celtic to win games. The best possible chance of that, as you say, taking Ralston out the team and replacing him with a square peg in a round hole. I don't think any is really want to see. And the manager said after the game, I don't think it affected us too badly. I mean, it was obviously a bit of a challenge for Greg to be on that side. But the funny thing is, we've got 3 right backs at the club, but unfortunately, one's ineligible. We're getting a lot of words wrong today, Quinn. I don't know what's happening. One's away and one get injured. And then he goes on to say, we'll see in terms of who and Anthony, but we'll see how he pulls up. Hopefully it's nothing serious. But on performance alone, I think there'll be some changes for sure. But we'll get onto those changes. But Ralston didn't have his best game at the weekend, but he's passed through for the opening goal last night is a thing of beauty. What a lovely ball through to Abada.
Yeah, Ralston, like I said, I don't think if he's fit and available, it's a foregone conclusion that he's still going to be the number 2 at the club with the addition of Alistair Johnson. I expect that to be a hotly contested position at the club still. And Ralston's definitely, even with Juranovic at the club, he's number 1 caliber potential, on his form under the manager. And it is then just the manager's choice on who he thinks is actually better. But I think Ralston is only getting better, and he was really frustrated. You could see how annoyed he was coming off injured there because he knows that he's getting into the driver's seat for that position. And then if he is injured now for 2 weeks or something, he might lose. He might have a hand off the wheel now all of a sudden.
And he took a few good dunts in the game, didn't he? I think that was the third time before they get taken off. They'd clattered him a good few times, Livy.
Yeah, and guys like that are fantastic to have, as the number 1 pick and getting that kind of cohesion and that kind of style of play integrated with. So it's square pegs in the round holes to one side. Ralston being injured is a miss for us, and hopefully it's not that severe an injury. Hopefully it's just maybe the one game he misses because it is so. It was last night it happened, this injury, and it looked like it was his back that actually put him off the pitch. He was holding his lower back, and who knows how long a back injury can be in some cases. So let's hope it's not too serious. But I think the next game is just probably too soon for him. Let's hope that's just the worst of it.
Yeah, absolutely. We're only two days away from that game. Just kind of over 48 hours, 49 hours. Just less than 49 hours looking at the clock just as we were recording this, Quinny. So, a game really quickly after it. And and I don't know how that'll work press-wise either, the kind of update that we'll get for the manager, whether they've just kind of done that last night and they'll build that into Saturday. That's what tends to happen in the media around Christmas time and whatnot, unless they've got him in on Friday doing press. But as you say, Quinny, having Ralston out the team certainly doesn't make us a better side at this point in time, just due to the situation that we face. But once again, credit where credit's due to Greg Taylor, because he's had an absolutely outstanding season up until now. And when the manager needed him, as I say, he obviously didn't fancy firing on Big Yates at right back or moving one of the centre halves over. When the manager needed Taylor, he was able to go over there. Bernabei came on, but you could see, I mean, that's my side of the pitch at Celtic Park. Kind of remember attacking in the second half or down that side, and you could see every time that Taylor got the ball in the box, certainly involved in attacks, but anytime you're maybe looking for him to get the ball across the face, he's always trying to turn back on at the left foot, which, is putting him at a disadvantage. And I thought it just kind of, a balance of play, I thought it affected it a wee bit. Not majorly, as I say, he was well involved in attacks when we were going forward. We played some lovely balls around the edge of the box, but anytime we're maybe looking for that out ball from Taylor, he was always trying to get back on the left foot.
Yeah, and I think the manager won't want to play that way again if he can avoid it. Now, I know he's played Juranovic at left back in the past, but I don't think Bernabei really covered himself in glory last night, so I don't think you want to play, clearly the second choice left back and then, Taylor in at right back. I think the manager will want to keep Taylor where he's optimal, when you can get 100% out of him and really use all of his abilities and maximise the form he's in. And then for right back, I'll get a cheap laugh first of all, right? Callum McGregor, and then I'll move on. But it could be, I reckon it'll probably be Jens that goes in there.
We've seen him at left back, so I mean, I actually made that joke last night. I mean, Callum can pretty much play anywhere, so yeah. But yeah, do you think so? Do you think he's again? When you play somebody like that, Quinny, you're going to lose that. One thing I do like about Moritz Jens is when he's playing centre half, he likes to take that step out, which is obviously what you kind of need to do if you're playing an inverted fullback role in the middle of the park. But you're going to lose a lot of pace if you put Jensen at right back. And it's again, would we explore the option of a back three in a game? You don't know. We did it. We had to do it last season up at McDermott Park because of COVID. We know Forrest has played right wing back. We know that Abada could probably play right wing back. You never know. There's another shout. In terms of his tracking back, absolutely. But it's another option. You never know. But I think, hopefully, but we're praying that Ralston's okay and he can come back in. And if not, that might be the option the manager considers, because I think that would just give the team a wee bit better balance, give Jens a game. But what do I know? Yeah. Let Ange pick the team.
I think from the manager's point of view, if Welsh was fit, he'd probably give him a shot. And if Welsh isn't fit, then Jens isn't any different, really, is he?
Yeah, the game that I remember Welsh playing right back was Ferencvaros away, and he did okay. But again, it limits you going an attack. That's when you're really looking for your other players to step up and cover the ground as well. You'd be looking for a Hatate or O'Reilly to really cover the ground there. Well, McGregor already does that, but it's one where we're speculating about just now. The best case scenario is Tony Ralston's fit and he plays, but we'll see what happens with Juranovic next week with Hibs and Rangers, because it's two massive games. If it's two other games, I'd probably be saying, nah, don't play him. But again, we don't know if there's possibly a deal already in place with Juranovic and our club, and they're saying don't play him, etc., etc. You've already touched on the centre half, Ben. I totally agree with you, Quinny. I think that's what it'll stick with going forward. I thought they were both brilliant. Up at Pittodrie, really cool, really solid. They're both, they know each other's game so well, and I think that's the most impressive thing about the two guys. They give a really good balance to the team. I know we lose a scrappy goal last night, but Livingston at times when they were going forward, you weren't really worried, were you? Because you always think CCV will be there, or Carroll will be there, and everything will be fine.
Yeah, I think we're all surprised to see Joe Newbley start on the bench, because we were all going into the game thinking he was the main worry.
Yeah.
So that's also why the goal felt so much of a sucker punch, because not only had we just scored, but they'd set up in this
Devlin. And it was Nicky Devlin that scored. Yep.
And they'd set up in this weird way, obviously, to play. That goal didn't really surprise me when it actually happened, because they've obviously designed themselves to, if this kind of situation happens, because right before the goal, the goalkeeper knocks it long, and then they've trapped us into playing heady tennis for like 10 seconds.
Yep.
and then one of them gets the ball down, plays it in, and then that's all she wrote. So it felt that's very sucker punchy, like they lured us into a trap there because not of our own making because we just scored, and then there's a wee half a second switch off where we engage in heady tennis and we don't try and bring the ball down like we
They
should.
always say that you're most vulnerable when you score a goal, don't they?
Yep, exactly. So yeah, that was probably the thing that annoyed me the most about it. But outside of that, like you're mentioning, Starfelt and CCV, pair them cool as cucumbers, and I think solidarity at the back and getting clean sheets is of a huge priority to the squad at the moment. So best way to do that, particularly with the whole right back situation that we've just laid out for everyone, that you need to keep the centre backs consistent now.
Absolutely, and that's a thing that the manager wants to do. I know he's hinted at changes for the weekend, but I don't think that'll be a position that you see change unless we're going to have Free, and there's another one added in there. In terms of Free is the magic number, as you do say, Quinny. The midfield Free, better balance with McGregor back in it. I said, if he was fit, he had to play. It was a real captain's performance at the weekend. He was absolutely everywhere. But we're trying not to dwell on the weekend too much because, last night's so fresh in our mind, but we'll bring it in a wee bit while we're chatting there. We've already spoken about CCV and Starfelt at Pittodrie, but McGregor, 140 passes compared to 117 completed passes by Aberdeen at the weekend, which is absolutely ridiculous. Covers the ground, always involved, and his strike is a thing of beauty. And again, leading from the front, he's just a fantastic player. And again, it wasn't his best game last night, but he's just always in there. He's always involved, and he's only with being out for so long. He's just going to need that wee bit of rhythm to get back into his game, isn't he?
I think he's back better than ever. I think I was saying this to somebody last night when I was recording, but I think he's been watching the game from the stands for the last couple of months and seeing that bird's eye view of, wow, if I was on the pitch, I could actually be 10 yards higher, or that run was on, I could have played that pass, because it feels like, like earlier in the season, McGregor's McGregor, right? We all know what he's been doing all season, but he didn't really command the games as often. He was more just facilitating football for a lot of the first half of the season, just keeping the ball moving over left to right. But now he is actually affecting the match and getting into the final third much more, playing those slide passes down in the channels or trying to link up around the edge of the box. And that's those were the missing pieces that we were waiting for him to start bringing. And I know Hatate got a rod. He had a pretty naff game last night and got a bit of a hard time from a lot of folk. But I think, once him and O'Reilly and McGregor are fully back adjusted with this better McGregor that I think we've got, then yeah, I think the midfield three is just about similar to the centre backs. Just keep them going, get them in a rhythm, and then they'll click, and then it should be up 2 levels across the three of them.
Yeah, and while we're on the topic of O'Reilly, this pod will go out today, so I better give it a shout out. I became quite pal with Matt O'Reilly's dad, Dom, and he's playing a gig tonight in Glasgow in the garage.
Cool.
There is some tickets still available. So if you're watching this and you fancy a gig tonight, Matt O'Reilly's dad, Dom, is on Straight Shooter, Sharpshooter, they're called. Double check that. But yeah, there's guys from Gun who you probably heard of, Quinny, band for the East End of Glasgow.
Yep.
Stir Crazy. Sorry, formerly of Straight Shooter, I think. They're on at 8:30 tonight in Glasgow. There is still tickets left at the door in the garage in Sucky Hall Street. So if you want to go along, you never know. You might end up bumping into Matt. I don't know if he's a big fan of his old man's music, but yeah.
What do they play? Do you know?
It's kind of rock tunes. Yeah. So his dad's really interesting guy. I mean, firstly, he's Matt O'Reilly's dad, but he's also knows loads of people in the music industry and whatever else. So, yeah, they're on tonight. So I shout out for Dom there and his band. I've retweeted the tweet, so if you've got me on Twitter, you'll see the stuff there. But they're on tonight, and it's a Stir Crazy Xmas special. So there you go. There's a wee shout out for that. And so yeah, that's that one. But in terms of the midfield, Turbo Moy came on last night. I think when the manager's hitting the rotation, you're probably going to see one or possibly two of them come into the midfield on Saturday, aren't you?
But yeah, I've had other people saying that to me as well. But I'm not as. I think Rio has been undropped so often that I really why would you drop him? He's played 2 games in 6 weeks or something, and I know it's 2 games concurrently, but he gets subbed off at the 60th minute all the time, So again, I'm not too sure. And again, O'Reilly, what's the benefit in not starting them? I think you want all three of them back together because they've not been together for a few months, never mind anything else. But Moy looked pretty handy when he came on. He looked really eager to impress. And, against St Johnstone, maybe you go for Moy over Hatate because he maybe just does settle into the match a bit better and doesn't make those errors that Hatate makes. Well, I know generally speaking, it is Turnbull for Hatate and Moy for O'Reilly, but I don't think against St Johnstone you want to weaken the midfield. And I think if you put Turnbull in strength-wise versus O'Reilly, I think you probably weaken the midfield. So it's one of those ones where I think the manager will probably copy-paste midfield, to be honest with you. I don't really see... that was one thing I actually wanted to kind of pick your brain on in the podcast today, because I'm not too sure where rotation really comes in. I don't think you can drop Abada. I don't think he's dropping Jota. And I don't think...
I think he will. I think he will drop Jota. It's been
really
2 poor games. He's arguably the best player in Scotland, but I just think he's ruthless that way. And I think that is... And again... I think we need to be careful, Quinny, with Ange if he says drop, because I think that's the kind of language he would likely turn on. I know what you mean. I know exactly what you mean. But right away, I'm not dropping anybody, I'm just rotating. So, rotationally wise, I think Jota might be one that will come out. We know he likes Dyson a lot. I thought Forrest, on his performance against Aberdeen, was deserving of a shout last night. I think you might see him even coming against St Johnstone. Yep. We'll get on to Giakoumakis because it seems to be a bit bizarre at the moment, this situation. And in the midfield, interesting too, when he was asked about Callum McGregor in the Aberdeen game, he was quite keen, Ange Postecoglou, to point out that O'Reilly and Hatate had carried the load, while Cal was out. So I think that might be at the back of his mind. And he'll know that, Aaron Moy was a player who he had pinpointed to kick on second part of the season. Good World Cup with Oz getting out the group, put out by the eventual world champions in Argentina. And David Turnbull too, it's almost became like a bit of a forgotten man, because when Ange first came in last season, I know Hatate wasn't in the building, neither was Matt O'Reilly, but he played a hell of a amount of football, didn't he, David Turnbull? So I think you might see some changes around him, Quinny. That's some positions, I think. So yeah, but because if he's hinting at that, that to me is where he's probably going to make the changes. But it's an interesting one, because do you remember similar comments after we beat Raith Rovers in the Cup last season? We beat them 4-0, and when he was asked about the squad, and he basically kind of batted away saying, it's not where I want it to be. You can see he's getting a wee bit, I think, annoyed. It's starting to come through a wee bit that he went over to Sydney. I think he was looking for better performances in those games. 2 friendly games, but I think, there was a lot of pride in Ange to take his team back there, and I think he was hoping to put on a better show for the fans. It turned out you're not looking anything into their ends game. He'll just be hoping that they get back up to the level that he knows they can get to. But there's absolutely nothing to be worried about just now. Celtic are very dominant in games. It's just about adding some extra goals into your game, which I think is all we would really like to see. In terms of the striking option, Kyogo starting 2 games in a row. Do you think that after, that rumour came out about Giakoumakis, I mean, this could only be speculation, but it's worth talking about, and he's been on the bench now twice. Is he going to drop Kyogo after scoring last night? Is the question I probably want to ask you. Rotate, I should say, after correcting our language on it.
I think if he was going to do that, you do it against Livingston, if anyone, but no, I think he's going to keep Kyogo in, because I think, and it's similar to what's in the back of my mind with Rio and also Maeda. Like, Maeda didn't feature at all last night, and I think he would have if we didn't need to make the Ralston sub. Maybe Forrest would have.
I found it interesting, Quinny. Sorry to just butt in with Dyson there, because I know both you and I like Maeda a lot. We probably could call this a Dyson podcast, but it was interesting. In Ange's pre-match for Livy, he was talking about Maeda. He likes to play Maeda when he knows there's space in behind defences, and he just knew that at half-time at Pittodrie that wasn't going to happen. So he obviously likes that directness of Abada, but when he maybe thinks there's going to be that wee gap in behind, that's when you're probably more likely to see Dyson Maeda, I think was what he was saying.
So I'm not sure Maeda's going to sit 2 games and not feature at all. So then, maybe he is one of the forwards that could rotate in, and maybe it could be for Kyogo.
Could be. I mean, this is something we had a chat about, before, and again at the weekend, I said to the guy that was standing beside me, I said, compared to his World Cup performances, a completely different player. I think he's wasting that right hand side. I don't think that's his position at all. When he plays the left hand side for us, he's decent. I know at Ibrox, he gets switched to that right hand side in the game that we won 2-1 there to try and help Jura out a wee bit. But I think if you're looking for the best Dyson made of the attacker, it's in the left hand side or through the middle for me.
Yeah.
But another guy he had into the conversation without even mentioning Seatak Sabanovic. I think how good he was before we went into the break. I thought it looked really good when he came on last night. I think he'll probably start at the weekend. I think you could definitely see Haksabanovic come in. Haksabanovic Forrest maybe could be your two, but it could be Haksabanovic Forrest Giakoumakis. Would a front feel like that surprise you? I don't think it would surprise me.
I would be really surprised not to see. It's funny, right? Because Abada get 90, and I think the manager is a very keen minute man. Like in terms of a lot of these guys are sharing positions with people. In essence, like we're saying, no one's dropped or rotated. So for Abada to get 90 and Maeda to get 0, I wouldn't be surprised if that did show itself somehow in the starting 11. But I think like it didn't drop Forrest after the hat trick, so I think equally like Abada's probably won the shirt for the next game after tonight, because how much training will they do? We know, the manager does a lot on the training ground to decide the team, but like we say, it's in 48 hours, so they'll have rest and recovery today. They maybe do something tomorrow, and then it's pre-match prep, and then off they go.
Absolutely.
So Abada, if he's fit and available, he's a young guy. He's not played football in like 4 weeks or something. So. And Abada's one of these guys for his statistics are amazing, but when you actually look at his whole thing at Celtic, like he's a punches and bunches guy. Like he gets hot and he'll score 5 goals and get 4 assists over 6 games or something mad, And when he's on, I think you just need to keep playing him. It's kind of similar to what we were talking about before with Champions League. Yeah, maybe it was a bit of stage fright, but also some of those games he wasn't going into them. Some of them he was, but some of them he wasn't going into them in like Abada form. So if he's on form now, I don't see the manager dropping him. But Haxa could be the Jota swap. No problem.
Could be. It could be. I like Haksabanovic a lot. I know you do too, and it's good that we've got a player like that. And again, we've saw Haksabanovic. I actually think the last time we played St Johnstone, we won 2-1 up there. Haksabanovic might even dropped into midfield in that game, if you remember right. O'Reilly, Hatate, possibly Haksabanovic, if I remember right. He set up the first goal, Haksabanovic. So, might see him. I think you will probably see him come into the game on Saturday. As far as I know, and it's the reason why I've wore this Celtic away kit, that Celtic are going to be wearing the away kit on Saturday. And the reason for that being, something I found out yesterday during an interview, is that Shelter Scotland have teamed up with the SPFL, both the men's and the women's league, the SWPL, to basically highlight the problem of homelessness in Scotland at this point in time. There's 8,500 kids that are homeless. 5 families every 90 minutes in a football game become homeless. So the whole point of this is to try and, at this time of year, Quinny, at Christmas time, the Christmas story starts off with a family looking for somewhere to lay their head. And it's the whole point of this symbolism that if a team does it with their home top, it's to try and symbolise, that difference that people have, that they don't have somewhere to call home. So that's why teams across the country, I think, including Celtic, I'd imagine Celtic wear this on Saturday, will be wearing the home kit. So there's information out about there. I think the hashtag is #NoHomeKit. You'll find it in Shelter's website, but I think it's a really good initiative to do, and it's great that the football clubs are also getting involved. It's quite a shame. I was talking to the assistant director at Shelter yesterday, doing an interview with him, and no team in England, the English aren't doing it at all, obviously probably because of kit sponsors and deals and whatever else, but Scottish football are supporting it. I think that's a really good initiative to be doing, and Celtic are certainly doing it as well. I think the women's team have already did it, and this will be the chance for the men's team to do it. So I just wanted to give that a wee shout out. I thought that was important. It's a problem that shouldn't exist in a rich country like Scotland, like the UK, and any other country that has a homeless problem. So and hopefully, and hopefully that awareness this time next year, in the festive period come down, we're talking about lesser numbers. It's not going to be solved in one stint, but 8,500 kids currently homeless in Scotland, a terrible statistic. So wanted to give that just a wee mention. That's why I've worn my Celtic away top. So if you're going along on Saturday, maybe think about wearing an away top or a third top, and if you've got anything, a quid or whatever, 50 pence, stick it in the tins if they're around the stadium, or I think you can text in or donate online, so it's there. Back to the football, Quinny. Everybody, we've already touched on it. Celtic across the face of the 6-yard box, not putting the ball away. Do we need another striker now? Because we don't know what this Giakoumakis situation is. It seems strange that he's, usually it would rotate Kyogo 1 week, then Giakoumakis, then Kyogo. It didn't happen. I think people are maybe wondering, has there been an issue there on the players' side? I don't think it'll certainly be the manager's side. You never know. I expect him to start on Saturday, but I think just with the amount of chances not even in chances, I just thought even getting into this season, I prefer free strikers. If you're playing a 4-3-3, I think the striking position is somewhere you need 3 players in. Do we need another striker in this window?
I'm not, again, with the chat we've had with Maeda and his versatility in the forward line as well.
Abada comes into that situation, doesn't he?
And Abada as well. And, so I'm not sure it's one of these. Again, I mentioned for his, like, Kobayashi, great transfer. Johnson, great transfer. But now the stage we're getting to, like we've mentioned before, is I would like, anyone we're bringing in for me has to be a serious addition. It can't just be a guy that is like a number 2 somewhere else, backup striker that we're going to bring in to be a number 3 or something.
But what you're saying is you don't want us to bring in a striker, a profile like Abogard, who's hardly featured for us, and just that kind of thing is what you mean?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It would need to be somebody that's going to be effective. And if it is going to be somebody that's effective, then like, where do you get the minutes? Like, where do you actually get, if we still have Giakoumakis and we still have Kyogo, like, having 3 strikers is definitely prudent and, just makes sense on a 25-man squad, of course. But, like, in all seriousness, like, I've seen that with the Korean guy that we've been linked to. Like, he's been quoted, or somebody's been quoted at some point in the last month as saying, like, first team football is a big priority for him in his transfer, which rules me out against him coming to Celtic, because there's no way he looks at this team and thinks, I'm definitely getting a first team chance here, because Kyogo couldn't get in the Japan squad. Amazing, Giakoumakis himself, of course, at an international, and then all the versatility options that we've got there. So I find it hard to imagine we're going to attract someone of a big enough quality without being able to say to them, we're already selling one, so there's room for you to come into. So it really does depend on Giakoumakis, is where I kind of fall on that, really. If he's staying there, I don't think we need anything up front.
Yeah, well, again, I think Ange likes that forward planning element of it, and I think anybody that possibly comes in January, we know that, according to the reports, there's a position Celtic still are targeting, that it could be the conversation there that he's saying to somebody, come in just now, you might not be playing every week, but certainly by the summer, you'll get that chance, and that may be the situation that you face. And again, Giakoumakis and Kyogo have missed a fair amount of sitters, as we call them. I think, I don't want to say we were spoiled by a Dembele and an Edouard, but both are really clinical players, very different to what we've got just now.
Sure.
Top quality players that are doing it at a good level, much like I think Kyogo and Giakoumakis could do. But I think if you brought in somebody of that profile of Chogu Sung, who's just came off the back of a World Cup, I think it'd be a real statement of intent bringing in a player like that. We'll obviously have to spend a good few quid on him. The Korean League is on the rise. And again, I think for me, Quinny, and I'll throw that back over to you, I would much prefer if it's going to be that kind of longer term option and somebody's going to depart the summer, for talking sake, maybe not January, that you have him in the building now, settled right back in. And it's not, taking that month, if you're in the Champions League, to just get used to things that you're in just now, getting really used to it. And when you come back next season, you hit the ground running. How does that sound?
Yeah, that sounds. Yeah, it's very much on trend with what we've been doing. In fact, because we said that with some of the guys that came in January, like last year coming into this year, that this was them. We should be really feeling the benefit of getting them in earlier. And I think we did the early season, and we probably will come to again throughout the season, because the squad is so strong, and it's because of the quality of the guys are that we have on the pitch. So yeah, like I totally see merit in that, but again, I just then struggle to think about who are we looking at then, because I don't see it then being like, because again, anyone who's worth their weight and wants to come in, they're not going to be happy just to come in for 6 months and just do some training and get some minutes here and play a cup game there, and maybe you start the semi-final, and maybe once the league's wrapped up, you start the 4 games at the back or something, but the back of the fixtures. So I think then we're probably not going to go and spend like the kind of money that I would like to see us spend on an improved striker to make the forwards better, because Kyogo and Giakoumakis are good. Getting somebody better will cost money. So then I think we're going to follow ourselves at the other end of the spectrum, where it'll be somebody much closer to an Abada or a Jota type, where it's maybe a high prospect academy kid from somewhere around the world, and we can maybe loan option to buy, or we can get them on a nominal fee, and it's, we can just bring them in and they're happy. Like Abada is like, I can develop like mad here, and then they can integrate into next season like you're talking about. So I think if that's where we're going, it just doesn't excite me as much.
No, I think that's fair. I think that's fair enough. Quinny, can Carlo Ramos maybe have a wee chat with him after his World Cup exploits? See if he fancy that his old mate Jota's there, so why not? I do but jest, but it's an interesting one. It's going to be something. I know we're being linked with Liduni as well as another one. We've brought two in. I don't think we're done yet, and I certainly think that Ange has got that longer term idea of where we'll be at. If there's been conversations taking place with Giakoumakis, again, this is important that it's only speculation at this point in time. I think you'll want to try and get that longer term option, and somebody who's going to, really start firing and taking those chances that I think he was frustrated about.
Well, I think that's where we get the biggest yards, is in kind of, what was that guy's name? The Moroccan guy, was he, or Tunisian or something?
Liduni.
I think that's where
Tunisian.
I think that's where we get the biggest uplift on our transfer, because like Turnbull's good, right? I like Turnbull. I love Rio as well, but both of them are nowhere near the finished article, and I don't think either one of them are perfect for what we are really missing. A real creative force in the middle of the pitch, a real playmaker that really does like open up the lines and can dribble by two or three guys. And I know O'Reilly and Rio can do that in spells, but it's not their game. It's a part of their game, if you know what I mean. And I would very much like us to see, if we're spending big money on another midfielder, it's somebody that is like that kind of playmaker, attacking midfielder type that links the forwards together and like gets into the box. When we're firing balls into the 6-yard box, it's a midfielder that's always wanting to get there and always like close enough to influence those areas of the pitch. So I'd like to see that before a striker in the immediate term.
Yeah, I think that's a fair enough comment. But we'll see how we roll. I think 2 additions to that would be really nice. Just in terms of outlays, we've got about 15 minutes here before we wrap up. Both 2 Celtic Academy players been linked with moves away this week. Bosun Label and Yoon Otu. Kind of looking at this, Quinny, for Label, who's 19, he's been called up, I think, to the Republic of Ireland team. It's Brentford who's been linked with him. Pisa and Hellas Verona is the other sides that are linked with him. Just in the Italian clubs, firstly, quite interesting. Celtic's almost been using the J League as a bit of a feeder league to go to, bring players in and possibly move them on in later years to come for money. Whereas Italian clubs now seem to be doing this with Scottish football, and we've seen it work. Your Hickeys, Ferguson, Henderson, Doig. And possibly that's why you've got Pisa and Hellas Verona, who I think Liam Henderson was at. Interesting label, but for a player of his profile, it's where does the minutes come again? I was interested to read Giakoumakis' comments and Doak, and basically making up his mind that he wanted to go to Liverpool. That was it, and he thought that the derby game would have swung it for him, but no. But for Label at 19, it's where does the minutes come, and it's a very difficult position at centre back. And much like Ange was saying around Scott Robertson on Friday, for a lot of these youth players, the timing was probably isn't right, because at this point in time for Labo, he's likely got Starfield, Vickers, Yents, Kobayashi, and Welsh all in front of him, doesn't he? So he's 6th choice, and it's how do you break into that team? And I know Celtic fans would maybe say, well, you play Labo in games over Yents because Yents isn't your player, but I don't think that's going to be the situation at all. And for him, it'd be great if we could sit. I think he's contracted until 2024. It's about showing him this is where your pathway is going to come, because he's been teased on the edge of the first team. He was on the bench at the weekend. Don't know if he was on the bench last night, but taking over to Sydney, etc. What do you think about that one?
I think both these guys are very highly rated. Like a good friend of mine that I respect a lot, is football opinion, seen Yoon Otu, if that's how you say his name. And, I'd never heard his name, but he came back he's seen Celtic B playing. He's a Dunfermline fan. His name's Hendo, if he's listening. And I can't remember the exact circumstances, but he said to me, he's like, that guy's a player. Like, that guy is a real talent. So I'm not surprised to hear that he has been scouted, from the academy, because a lot of these academy scouts that go out there to look at our B team, and then like we did to find O'Reilly and a few other people, and even Ajax with Calvin Bassey. So much of young player ID is on physical parameters and is on their potential for strength and speed and turn of pace. And a lot of clubs and a lot of youth academies rely on the fact that if you can bring the raw minerals, we'll teach you how to play better, kind of thing. If you're fast enough, quick enough, strong enough, and motivated enough. So I think it's really clever that these clubs are turning to that. And it's a great sign that we repeatedly have guys that are getting flagged as these guys are ticking boxes for, on a lot of talent ID.
Brentford's a pleasing one with me, Quinny, because I know you take the deep dives like I do, but with some football clubs have got that link with Midtjylland. You see how the way they work. A lot of their transfers are done by metrics and data, looking at players. And as you say, the fact that Labo is ticking the boxes for Brentford, I think to me is quite pleasing. The only worry is where the pathway comes in. I think, again, Robertson possibly. It's just the circumstances and the timing of it. And when you're looking at somebody like Liel Abada, who we were talking about, that Celtic brought in, I think is a 19-year-old. Then was 20, I think he's 21 now, Abada. When you bring in a player of that quality, I don't know what that maybe says to your youth academy. And maybe it's just a situation that we're in just now with Celtic and that. And again, Kobayashi, looking at it, I was talking to Liam, who does Celts Down Under and a Celtic State of Mind on Tuesday. And this was something that I think is a kind of widely held opinion in football circles in Japan, is that Maya Yoshida retiring. I think Maya Yoshida's 35, 36.
Yeah.
So it's likely that Koa Takura is going to become that kind of mainstay at the back for Japan going forward. Of course, we were linked with him. It looked as if that was a deal that could happen because his agent is connected to CA base. Of course, Frank Trimbley connection that I've spoken about on here with Ange Postecoglou. He went to Schalke. I think he's still at Schalke, Koa Takura. And it's very possible, I think, from what I've heard from various people who are interested in Japanese football and live in Japan. One's a Japanese journalist, as I say, Liam, is a Celtic fan that lives in Japan. That Kobayashi could be that partner to Itakura going forward for the national team at his young age. And, for a player of his profile, he'll be coming to Celtic wanting to play games. And for Labo, that's just an unfortunate position to be caught in.
With the manager, I totally agree. And Koa Takura, I think he's actually moved on to Gladbach now. I kind of nodded at first there, and then a wee light bulb went off in the back of my head, just in case anyone's typing any angry comments. But I think a part of the manager's forward planning as well is I'm just kind of thinking.
I'll get told off for that because one of my friends, David Slight's a big Gladbach fan, and he goes
really?
over there and all that to the games, and I'll get told off for that. So sorry, Quinny, I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, that's all right, man. But I think part of the manager's forward planning is I'm just thinking as we're talking there now, the team that we signed Rio Hatate from, Kawasaki Frontale, right? Again, probably no one out there cares or really knows, right? But just to give you the punchline, over 5 years, they really dominated the J League, and they were doing really well, and Champions League and all the rest of it. And we're building up to have a really dominant domestic team, right? And I'm using that as a reference because that's what Ange Postecoglou will know. He'll recognise that from his time in Japan. And at some point, if all this clicks for us, we will go into a transfer window where 5 guys get sold. See next season if we really achieve.
I hope not.
Well, I hope not as well, right? But let's just call it how it is. If we go on and achieve the potential that we are all telling ourselves that we have, right? Mm-hmm. We get into a Champions League group, we finish second, we get to the knockout rounds, maybe some good stuff happens. We're dominating domestically, our guys are going through the roof. Then there will come a point where people do show up with a lot of money and like Ange said, sometimes, we will need to be agile in the market and whatever. And I think if we fast forwarded 12 months and you were to extrapolate out the best case scenario of how well we do, you're then left with the consequences of, well, how attractive does Carter Vickers look to a lot of clubs now? How attractive does this player now look to a lot of clubs now? And then it's like Bosan Lowell and some of these other guys that we're talking about, if we bring in a third striker, where's the pathway, where's the minutes? But maybe the manager also has in the back of his mind that we are amazing, potentially. And if that does happen, then at some point we will have a spine ripped out or we will have an arm chopped off or something will happen because the players will do so well that somebody will want to buy them.
Well, you could be looking at from this point, January to the summer, you could be losing two players who were arguably two of your top players were in the league last season, Juranovic and Giakoumakis. Which I think's, to me, that's the kind of that's the way I'm quite happy for this to work. That it's one or two. I think something like 5 would be a disaster unless it's deadwood. But we're looking as if we're going to shift a bit of the deadwood out. And if it's one or two, I think that's just the way to kind of go forward to this. If it's just one or two, I think that's a good way to work it. If it's Juranovic in January, then come the summertime, it's Giakoumakis. You've already brought in Alistair Johnson, so that's cool. If you bring in that third striker in this window, if Giakoumakis goes in the summer for total sakes, Kyogo Sung's there or whoever it is, as long as it's not Kevin Nisbet. I know some Celtic dads were on, after he scored, saying, "No thanks." But looking at it, I find it an exciting situation because before you were thinking, no, we're going to sell somebody and we're not going to replace him and be a repeat. But thankfully, we're not in that situation at this point in time. Alistair Johnson proves that, and depending on who we bring in as a third striker, whether it's in January or in the summer, and we'll see that again. But losing some players if they're at asking price like Juranovic, and say it is Barcelona, we'll have money to invest in the team, and we know that Celtic aren't short of cash. They put themselves in a position to make sure that they could spend like last season, coming off the back of COVID.
I think the big problem is that Barca will be a bit short of cash, probably.
Well, that could be. So, if anybody's out there and they do have a subscription to Spotify, or they don't have a subscription to Spotify, please do sign up. And if you're not streaming enough, get on playing your tunes just in case Barcelona do come a chapping. But just kind of to close, Quinn, in the last 5 minutes, just to kind of look at the overall picture, this probably won't be our last podcast of the year. I think we'll be on next week if we can get away for the turkey and the pigs and blankets and the cheese boards and whatever else and the cans. But last night, 2-1 victory over Livingston. It wasn't pretty, but building into everything, it's one league defeat in 49 games. It's 9 wins in a row for the first time under Ange Postecoglou in the league.
Nice.
And it was 202 goals against Livingston, which, all builds into a rather nice picture. I thought at the weekend, 200 goals. What I want to ask you, I told you I was going to make up a quiz for you, but I think this is a harder question to fire over to you. Sure. 200 goals under Ange. What's your top 3 goals under Ange? 202, sorry. So you can pick one for last night. I don't know what you'll pick any for last night, mind you.
The Jota Kyogo one in must have been Europa. Yeah, that's the first one that springs to my mind. Undoubtedly. I also think oh Jesus, what a hard question.
One of mine is Kyogo's chip in the League Cup final. I thought that was a phenomenal goal.
Yeah. That was it. Yeah, the Kyogo chip. That was a belter as well.
I'm throwing that one in. So there's one for you. There's one we scored against St Johnstone and we beat them 7-0, and I think it's about 25 passes before the ball goes into the net. It was a thing of beauty. I don't know if you remember that goal, but it's pass, bang. So I'm putting that one in.
Greg Taylor's goal against Rangers was under Ange, wasn't it?
Yep, in the semi-final of the Scottish Cup.
No, in the league. I think it must have been under Ange. I'm just looking at it now. Hatate got 2. Hatate's goals. Some of Hatate's goals have been belters. And Jota's. Oh, my God, actually. There's probably been a few of this. The Jota's earlier this year was a worldie.
Yeah, that was a real cracker. There's been so many, actually. I mean, I put you in a spot there doing that to you. I didn't give you any warning about that. I'm even trying to think back here. I mean, like, seeing that third goal went in against Rangers in the Derby game this year. But we didn't want to make this a recap of the year type thing, but we've kind of walked into this here. When that third goal went in against Rangers this year, if you didn't already have belief in this team, which I think we were all right into, we were going to do this, that was the goal you went, wow, because you thought, I think we were all hoping that second half we were going to, really go for it, but it was the quickness between the two goals. Actually, might have been Abada or Hatate, I can't mind it. I think it was Abada actually scored the third goal, and it was just complete. You were still celebrating the second goal when the third goal went in. It was absolutely mental.
Yeah, you've actually reminded me. My favourite goal was in that match, and my favourite goal was David Turnbull's. That was the
That's the 4-0 game. That's the 4-0 game.
Oh, sorry. I've went into the last game there, sorry. The 4-0 David Turnbull goal, that was my favourite.
You're just saying that for badness to annoy folk, by the way. But, you know, even cheeky things like the Juranovic Panenka, against Leverkusen was just outrageous. You know, but just kind of looking back at it, even underrated wise, Cameron Carter-Vickers getting that goal at Ibrox to put us 2-1 up after we went down 1-0 early. I know it's not pretty, and I know it's not going to be one that wins a goal of the season award, but really, really important goals like that. And just in terms of this kind of year, watching Celtic, Quinny, what would you say top 3 highlights? I know I said top 3 goals, but what's been your top 3 highlights watching Celtic this year?
What game was it? There was a game a few months ago where Kyogo and Dyson both got involved in the goals and everything. And like, I play fantasy football stuff, people maybe know. And I had a great time. I actually won a Kyogo kind of thing. It was worth a lot of money and stuff. So cool. That was a great one. Champions League stuff was great as well. I think this year, like, you know, in terms of like having Real Madrid come was a nice thing to be there for, you know. But
in the moment, I think, Quinny, before you go into the second half of the game, in the moment, the start of that game, to be back in the Champions League, to be back there under Ange Postecoglou, especially because we knew what kind of football we were going to play, and to hear that anthem again at Celtic Park, I thought was really, really special once again, because I kept repeating on here, the last time we'd heard it competitively in a match, I know, in case anybody's out there and going to say, oh, we played it up when we get presented the league title competitively in a match, was against Anderlecht in December 17. So we'd not heard it at Celtic Park for so long. So I would agree with you. It's one of my favourite moments. The night at Tannadice, when we clinched the league, when that final whistle went, I thought was really, really special to see the pure joy and emotion. Callum McGregor and the other players after that, I thought was really, really special. And probably that first 3-0 victory over Rangers, because, you know, the season previously for us had been hellish. We all know that with the situation we're in. We had beaten Rangers at all this season. Previously, the last time we'd beaten our derby rivals was September 19. It must have been under Neil Lennon. No, sorry, that's a lie. It must have been the League Cup final. So time previously in the league had been September 19, start of September, and then the time previously had been December 19. So we hadn't beaten our derby rivals since then. So I think they're my 3, Quinny. I'll let you, but 3-0 against Rangers in early February, I thought that was a real wow. Winning the league at Tannadice when that final whistle went, and probably hearing the Champions League music again at Celtic Park against Real Madrid. So there's my 3. Tell me yours.
I would go with Champions League, of course. And again, just listening to you, like, the title celebrations were amazing last year. You know, I'm thinking more about in the stadium, you know, like, we don't stop absolutely. And all that. And like, that's just the stuff that you want your manager to do, you know, when you're winning the league. And it's like, we're going to be bigger, we're going to be stronger. You know, next year's going to be, you know.
And I know the weather. I thought the weather kind of made it that day, and it felt really like a carnival atmosphere at Celtic Park, didn't it? And we really good performance actually that day. We beat Motherwell 6-0. That was a special day too. It's probably a toss up between that and the 3-0 game and the derby. I just thought that night was great because the circumstances even around it. That if you go back a year ago exactly today, we played St Mirren 2-0. Remember? Everybody's going, because it was off the back of the League Cup final. And then the game up at St Johnstone was behind closed doors. We won 3-1. Joey Dawson was playing for Celtic that day. And then the shutdown came early. Remember, we were meant to play Rangers at the turn of the year or just before it. Shutdown came early. Game get put back to midweek February. And it was just so important to have the fans there too. It's actually incredible to think that was a year ago because I had COVID. I missed the St Mirren game. It was the only league game I missed home or away last season was that St Mirren game because I was lying in my bed dying. But so yeah, I think, you know, just looking at the whole picture, 2022, good year to be a Celtic fan. 2021, half of it was good, but 2022 certainly has been our year, but we're hopeful in 2023 we're picking up more silverware. We hopefully return to the Champions League. We'll be here covering that all the way. Play St Johnstone at the weekend. Just a wee quick one, Quinny, before we go on. We went right over time here. Hopefully Craig's get us in a bonus. How many changes for the weekend? I'm going to say he'll make 4 or 5.
Ooh. I'll say 3. I think so. Obviously, Ralston. I think Maeda comes in somehow, and I think you're right. Maybe hacks about. Yeah, I think 3 probably is what we end up with. Yeah,
3. I'll say 5. Won't go for a score prediction because we don't like doing that too
10-0.
often. 10-0. Listen. There's been points, Quinny, but you've been watching a Celtic team, you've been thinking we're going to give somebody a doing here, and it came obviously with Dundee United, and we were kind of building up to that. It'd be great if we get in that form, and that came maybe at the turn of the year, but we've got, we'll be back on, we'll be talking about St Johnstone, and we'll probably be on after the Hibs game next week if I'm not too hungover after a day out to the capital in December. Terrible timing, by the way. Whoever thought to send us through to Edinburgh in that week where you don't know what day of the week it is was a really bad idea. So we'll all enjoy that. To everybody watching, thank you for your support. We're noticing that the audience is building, so thanks for continually watching me and Quinny talk Celtic. It's a pleasure to do so. If you haven't already, please do subscribe to the channel. We'll be bringing you plenty of content, and also like the video. Quinny, have a great Christmas. To all our listeners, have a great Christmas, and we'll see you after Santa's been down the chimney, and hopefully Celtic still have a 9-point or more advantage by then. Take care, God bless, and have a great Christmas, everyone.
He will.